Welcome to Maniac Movies LLC, and we're going to talk The Mangler, maybe Stephen King's most hated theatrical film ever. You have the Tobe Hooper, the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Poltergeist, and Life Force. You have Stephen King, the undisputed master of horror fiction. You have Robert Englund, the star of the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, except for the god-awful remake. So how, with that much talent involved, I mean, you even have Ted Levine, Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. So again, how with that much talent involved does this movie fall so flat? Well, it's about a haunted laundry press, so bit of a hard sell.
There's a little bit of me in that machine, and a little bit of it in me.
There was an accident today. The worst one I've ever seen.
Have you considered the possibility that the machine might be haunted?
That machine killed your daughter. We all have to make sacrifices.
Human sacrifices.
Okay, so The Mangler was released in the mid-90s, and it was actually Tobe Hooper's last wide theatrical release because the movie failed so miserably. Critics hated it. But it's developed a little bit of a cult following in the last few years. Nevertheless, when people talk about bad Stephen King films, this is almost always going to come up. And while there are a few others on that list of movies that people just make ass fun of as far as Stephen King, including the one he directed himself, Maximum Overdrive, along with Sleepwalkers, which I thought was actually okay. I haven't watched it in a while, but I remember really liking it when I was a kid. The Dark Tower movie, which everyone hated with McConaughey and Idris Elba. But yeah, The Mangler comes up. And The Mangler is taken from a short story from the collection Night Shift. And yes, this is an original printing. You see how old this thing is. But this actually was a very lucrative book for Stephen King because there were so many movies that came out of this collection of short stories. You had Sometimes They Come Back. You have Graveyard Shift. You have The Lawnmower Man, which is... Does that even count anymore? I mean, King sued to have his name taken off of that movie. It has nothing to do with the short story, but whatever. Yeah, they can't even say his name in the special features on the Blu-ray. What else was in this? I mean, there was quite a few. Children of the Corn. I mean, that's his longest-running franchise. So yeah, Night Shift was very good for Stephen King's pocketbook at the very least. And yeah, The Mangler was taken from that. Now it's a pretty short story about a demonically possessed, laundry press. And the movie had to obviously expand on that considerably. So the movie is directed by Tobe Hooper, and it's an odd film. But see, I kind of got to defend this one. I kind of like this movie, and quite a few people have sort of started thinking this is something of a guilty pleasure. Because yeah, the movie is flawed, but it's a weird, wild ride, and that's true of most of Tobe Hooper's movies. I actually really love Tobe Hooper, R.I.P. I mean, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of my top 5 favorite movies, but I also really enjoy most of the movies he directed up until the last few of his career. So, what The Mangler is about is it's about a young girl who is a virgin, just turning 16, and she gets her hand cut while she's working in her uncle's laundry factory. Like, this is a professional laundromat, so it's not like you walk in and bring your clothes. They're doing the hospitals and that sort of thing. And she cuts her hand, and it's like an artery, man. She's bleeding all over the place, and it gets all over it gets on the Mangler, this giant thing, the Hadley Watson 6, and some genius on IMDb actually noticed that both Hadley and Watson have 6 letters in the words, and then 6, so it's actually 666. So that's an Easter egg for geniuses. Like, you gotta be damn near what's the word, a savant, to pick up on that, because I didn't think of it. So there's the big 6 on the front of the machine, and this machine is an incredible prop. This thing's awesome looking. I mean, it's a really cool, huge machine. All these gears, and it doesn't look anything like what a real laundry press would look like. It looks like a laundry press from hell. But they do specifically mention that the thing's like 100 years old, so at the very least, they kind of justify it a little bit. But that's the thing, this movie has its own weird universe. And that's what Hooper did so well with this movie, is this whole flick is so visually interesting. It's like a big budget episode of Tales from the Crypt almost. It's so unique. There is not a single boring room. Every exterior, everything is just so much style and so weird and so over the top. This thing was not filmed in the United States. It was filmed mostly in London and I believe South Africa. But yeah, even down to Robert Englund's look. Like, Robert Englund is in heavy prosthetics. Robert Englund was only in his 40s when this movie was made, but they were trying to make him look like he was like 80. So he's in a ton of old man makeup, and it's good enough. It's not great. The hair looks really fake, but the jowls they give him, and he's also got a bad eye. He's got these big like metal braces on his leg. He's wearing all those stilt things they put on your arms so you can walk when your legs don't work anymore. And Englund is just having the time of his life. Robert Englund has said that his performance is actually a caricature of Tobe Hooper on set, just stomping around. God damn it, no enough time. And Englund, Robert Englund always finds the tone of the project he's in. Like if he's in a very serious movie, like a straightforward horror film, like Urban Legend, he plays it straight. If he's in something that's really goofy and comedic, like Hatchet, he plays it goofy and comedic. And in The Mangler, he realized he was in a very crazy, over-the-top movie, so he plays it very crazy and over-the-top. This would be the third film Englund worked with Tobe Hooper on after Eaten Alive, the giant crocodile movie. Night Visions, that weird-ass Marquis de Sade movie. And then this, and then he did one more, the Masters of Horror episode, Dance of the Dead. So they obviously had a pretty good rapport, and Englund was good at fun. It was a good match for Tobe Hooper. So, Hooper, his films are always very odd and very over the top and very crazy, except for Poltergeist. You always have that debate of whether or not he directed Poltergeist or whether Steven Spielberg did. I mean, whatever. So anyway, he's the uncle. He's the guy who runs the place, and his niece, who he cares for because her parents are dead, has bled on this machine, and she's a virgin. And then the machine has got a taste for blood, and everything starts going wrong after that, and people keep getting hurt, and this cop's investigating, played by Ted Levine. Now, this is a rare leading man role for Ted Levine, and his awesome hairpiece. But, Ted Levine, obviously, goodbye horses, jam his stick between his legs and dance. Someone's car alarm's going off. So this is a rare leading man role for Ted Levine, and he's good in it. I mean, he's a good actor. He's just not really a traditional leading man. He's not that handsome. He's got that weird voice. I'm not sure if that's a speech impediment or an injury or what, but he grumbles. Supposedly Seth Green, when he does the voice of Chris on Family Guy, the fat son, he's imitating Ted Levine's voice. But Ted Levine's a good actor. He was also in the Hills Have Eyes remake. He was on that show Monk forever. And it's funny because Ted Levine, after he did The Silence of the Lambs, he said he didn't want to be typecast as a psychopath, so he intentionally avoided psychopath roles, and instead he got typecast as a cop because like 95% of his roles are as cops. But he's the cop, and he's on the case, and he can sense that something's weird about this place. And this old lady who gets killed by the Mangler, it is gnarly, man. This movie, I saw this thing when it came out. I was a little kid when I saw it, and this movie gave me a lifelong appreciation, border on fear of heavy machinery. I don't want to die like that. Honestly, the old lady's death when she's getting pulled into the thing that folds sheets, so it's crushing her. And it's like crush. Like, how much could that possibly hurt? That I just can't imagine a worse way to die than getting caught in a piece of machinery. Because you're not dying fast. You're crush. And this movie's gory as hell. The makeup effects are fantastic. Or the gore effects, at least, are really, really good in this movie. So, the old lady, she gets crushed and sprays blood all over everybody. And when I was watching, I was like, no, those sheets are ruined. But, yeah, and she gets spit out the other side. So this movie, it also has an unrated cut. The unrated cut's only about 10 seconds longer, so it's nothing to really write home about. But yeah, after the old lady dies, the cops get involved, but they can't figure out how the accident happened because everything seems to be functioning on the machine. The machine has a safety bar that if a person gets caught in it, the safety bar is supposed to lift the machine shut itself off automatically. It just didn't work. So yeah, they start investigating it, and Ted Levine has his brother-in-law. His wife is dead; he's a widower. But his brother-in-law lives right next door to him, and his brother-in-law is this weird guy that I always misremember as being a priest, but he's not a priest. He's actually a professor of the occult. And the guy's house is weird. That's what I'm saying. Is everything in this movie is so odd. Like his brother-in-law's house looks like if a 12-year-old that liked horror movies had their own house. Like he has a pteranodon dangling from a tree outside his house. He has Christmas lights everywhere. He has like voodoo skulls and masks. He uses a rubber snake as a bookmark. He's a weird dude. And the actor who plays him is odd. His delivery is very strange. Everybody's playing to a 10 in this movie. There are no subtle performances in this movie. Levine is very, very intense through the whole flick. All the actors, Englund screams most of his lines. The two female leads who look too much alike, in my opinion. If you're going to cast two actors that look alike and it's not a plot point, do something to make them look less alike. Because the two female leads are the niece, who gets her hand cut at the beginning, Robert Englund's niece, and this girl named Rita Sue, I believe, who's apparently was like a runaway that he just took in because he wanted to have sex with her. But these two look too much alike. and they're both very, very thin, pretty white women with very curly hair. So, yeah, and neither actress had much of a filmography behind her. The niece did was in a few things, but not much. And this is literally the only movie Lin Sue, maybe her name was Lin Sue, whatever Sue, Robert Englund's girlfriend in the movie. This is the only movie she was ever even in. But yeah. So Ted Levine's brother-in-law is convinced that something supernatural is happening pretty much right off the bat. Ted Levine is more of a skeptic. He's trying to like, no, but see, there's this weird subplot with a refrigerator that gets bumped into the Mangler as it's being moved out of the Blue Ribbon laundromat that Robert Englund runs. So the Mangler apparently transferred some of its evil into the refrigerator. Again, this is a weird script. And the refrigerator gets dropped off, and this kid gets trapped in it and dies. And it's actually kind of a legitimately sad scene because the kid's dog is sitting there just all sad, and and you've seen those in like those try not to cry YouTube videos where a pet will sit by its owner after it's died because he doesn't understand that it's dead. So, and Levine just flips out and he smashes the hell out of the refrigerator, and like this blue geyser of lightning shoots out of the refrigerator. And this buddy of Ted Levine's, this photographer who I could never tell if he's a paparazzo or if he works for the cops or something. They just call him the picture man. And he's a weird old guy, and he's like, I didn't know you could do magic. Saw a ghost there, did you? And this photographer is actually not old. That's makeup, and the photographer also plays the guy in the morgue, the guy that works at the mortician. So it's the same actor in both roles. But yeah, Picture Man, and that's a kind of a fun supporting character. That's the thing is, there's no wasted stuff in this movie. Even though I do think this movie could have been cut by about 10 minutes, and that would have helped the pacing some. Everyone's weird and everything's odd, and like even when Ted Levine's just going into the morgue, he has to go down this weird like stone steps with vertical blue neon lighting for no reason. It's like he's going into that creepy ass S&M club from Seven or something. Just everything's so odd. There's so much world building, and you don't really think of world building as being a thing in horror movies. But that's what I like about this movie. Is this movie's like a Tim Burton movie from hell. It's like a mean, dark, gory Tim Burton movie. You may be saying to yourself, isn't that Sleepy Hollow? No, not playful. This movie takes itself really seriously. And that is kind of to its detriment because it's such a ridiculous plot, but it also just does make this such a unique film. This is such a weird movie to watch. And yeah, so the movie keeps going from there. Also, I really like the score for this movie. I looked it up, and the composer, doesn't really have much of a filmography behind him. The only movie I recognize that he had done, aside from this, is a movie called Shop Girl, where Steve Martin, the old guy with the white hair from the Cheaper by the Dozen movies, is trying to bang Claire Danes from Homeland, the TV show. But yeah, I'm gonna record, but I really like his score for this. It's very odd, it's very unique, and everything about this movie is so weird. So after busting up the demonically possessed refrigerator, and that scene actually has a really lame scare in it where the brother-in-law reaches into the refrigerator and it slams on his arm. It's like, you probably should have cut that, because that's just a dumb scare. That just doesn't work at all. But, Ted Levine is finally kind of sold on it because he knows something supernatural is happening. He goes down he breaks into the Blue Ribbon place that Robert Englund runs, and he's trying to check out the Hadley Watson Mangler, and he gets his long-ass trench coat caught in the thing. And how do you get out of a machine that's trying to suck you into it to crush you to death, and it's got your coat? Do you take off your coat? No, you take out your gun and shoot the coat off. That was so insane. Like, that's one way to handle it. I mean, I guess, if you really like that coat, and you still have half of it. But so after that, he's pretty well convinced, and even the foreman that works for Robert Englund's character, God, what was his character's name? Robert Englund played. They say that. Olet, I think. But even the foreman, he's starting to like, something's going horribly wrong here, and they introduce this whole subplot where Robert Englund's a devil worshiper, and the Mangler is possessed, and they say that early on that it's not so much haunted as it is possessed, and so long as they make sacrifices to it, that keeps the town prosperous. Now, we don't really see much of this town, so we don't really have any sense of how prosperous or peaceful the town is, other than actors telling us, and I think that might have been a budgetary problem. But yeah, Robert Englund kind of implies to his foreman that, if you just play along, we'll make sure you're rich, you'll be set for life. But he doesn't. He feels all guilty about it. And Robert Englund has a lot of really cool lines in this, like when he's seducing the young runaway girl, he's like, there's no free lunches in this world, not no siree. And he's talking to the foreman. He's like, let your conscience be your guide. And the most famous line from the movie is also Robert Englund says, "There's a little bit of me in that machine, and there's a little bit of it in me." Yeah, so it's a very over-the-top crazy, and it's one of Robert Englund's more memorable performances. I think my favorite non-Freddy Krueger role of his is still Strangeland, where he played the redneck vigilante, but this is high up there. I do like him in this movie a lot. He's having a great time. At one point, someone gets caught, the foreman gets caught in the Mangler, and his niece is screaming, "Do something!" And he's like, "Oh, I'll do something. I'll do a little dance." And he's like on his little arm stilt things stomping around. It's crazy as hell. And the niece is playing it to the hilt. Like, she screeches a lot in this movie, and she gets sprayed with blood a lot too. But yeah, so the foreman has to have his arm cut off to keep him from being sucked into the Mangler. In the book, it says he lived. In the movie, it implies he dies, but it doesn't show it. But yeah, and then the cop and the brother-in-law. And that's the thing, is there are too many scenes of the cop and the brother-in-law, Ted Levine's character, just kind of talking about what's going on, because, all we need to know is there's a big-ass, demonically possessed laundry press. Yeah, that's as much scene. You don't need to have all this back and forth about, well, what if there's a, this or that, or what if it's black, what if it's Christian, there's too many scenes of them discussing what's going on. But, it does slow the movie down a little in the middle, but it picks back up at the end when the movie just goes insane, because Robert Englund and his new girlfriend try to feed the niece to the Mangler, and this thing is, the Mangler comes to life and is stomping around, and it's actually pretty decent CGI for mid-90s, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Tobe Hooper was smart enough to not show it too much, and he lit it very darkly, because CGI in the mid-90s was terrible. So you see enough of it, but not too much of it, so there are only a few shots that are really bad looking. The Mangler's eye looks really fake. But the part where it rips the guy in half, that was actually a pretty cool death scene. So yeah, and we travel down into hell randomly. That was not explained at all, but they end up in the hell from the end of Wes Craven's New Nightmare at the end. And yeah, then you get the little twist at the end. So overall, like I said, I understand why people hate this movie. It is a weird movie, and the first time you watch it, you're just going to be dumbfounded by what you're seeing. But when you really stop and think about it, this is a very singular viewing experience. There is nothing else really like this, even in Tobe Hooper's filmography. This is a very unique movie. It had 2 sequels, weirdly. I saw The Mangler 2.0. It was god-awful. It had Lance Henriksen in it. And I like Lance Henriksen. It was just a terrible movie. It was something about a demonically possessed computer in college. I don't even remember. And there was a third one called The Mangler Reborn. I don't hate myself, so I couldn't watch it. But yeah, for such a mocked movie, it did get 2 sequels. And I actually have the German numbered Blu-ray special edition. They only made 666 of these. But this is a cool little Blu-ray. But you can get the same in America now from Scream Factory. It just doesn't come in the cool little book format. But yeah, you can get that from Scream Factory. And it does have the unrated cut on it. And again, the unrated cut's only about 10 seconds of gore. You see the old lady's mangled corpse more clearly. The death scenes at the end are a little bit more nasty. I love Robert Englund at the end. It's like, "My father, who art in hell, cursed be thine." There's a lot of crazy ass lines in this movie. Ted Levine and his brother-in-law trying to do an exorcism of a giant pissed off laundry press. It's things that should be comical, but because the movie's playing it so straight, you're more just dumbfounded in a "what in the hell am I watching" kind of way. And that's what, like I said, that's what most people probably hate about it, but that's what I actually really kind of like about it. So is this Stephen King's worst film adaptation? I don't think so. It's definitely his weirdest, though. Worst theatrically? I don't know. I'd have to actually really think about that. I personally hated the Pet Sematary remake, but I don't think I don't know if it's necessarily that awful. It's just so unnecessary. But yeah, overall, The Mangler. I have a hard time calling this bad, but it is not for everyone. It is the kind of movie you kind of have to see to believe, because even my description, I'm probably not doing it justice for just how strange this movie was. So yeah, I will have another update on Friday. In the meantime, I actually suggest you watch The Mangler if you've never seen it. That's it. I got it.